Holy Grail! You mean to tell me that much loved and influential UK indie rock band the Stone Roses are proponents of an esoteric alternate history of Christianity that involves the Knights Templar, the Holy Grail, myriad secret societies, and hidden wisdom, and was featured in Dan Brown's blockbuster 2003 techno thriller, The Da Vinci Code? Well, maybe not Rennie. He seems a bit too cool for all that. But the other three? Maybe. We're gonna have to find out. So let's explore some ancient mysteries and see where this rabbit hole leads. It usually leads to a place where rabbits used to be, but either were scared away or died. But we'll never know unless we look. So what am I talking about? There's a belief among some that the foundational myths of Christianity, if not being outright lies, certainly leave a lot out. They say that should the true details of Jesus' life ever be revealed, it would destabilize organized religion and pose an existential threat to the established church. Therefore, since the time of the Romans, the church has viciously suppressed this knowledge and ruthlessly silenced those who knew the truth. In this video, I shall make the case that the music of the Stone Roses continues a long tradition of great artists and thinkers to encode this story in their work using symbols and allegorical language. And yes, a major motion picture event directed by Ron Howard and starring Tom Hanks laid all of this out with little to no consequence, but you just don't get it, man. So let me put you in the picture. First, who are the Stone Roses? Formed in Manchester, UK in 1983, the Roses fused a 1960s vocal and guitar style with danceable 1980s rhythms and a very modern pop sensibility to create something that was both fresh and familiar. Catchy melodies, infectious bass lines, tambourine-heavy grooves, and a general vibe that contrasted this peace and love sound with some genuinely threatening and sometimes violent lyrics. On top of that, they had this rather petulant and belligerent persona.
Looks like we've had a power shortage or something, so we'll move on to the next item. And Martin Parr is one of Britain's leading photographers.
We're wasting our time, lad.
Rather than making social commentary. He has already agreed to take 2 of the photographs out of his current exhibition.
Their attitude left many wondering how this particular collection of knobheads could have produced work so sophisticated and magical. They gave us perfectly crafted radio singles, 9-minute epic musical journeys, and everything in between. And with their astonishing 1989 debut album, The Stone Roses, they were set for greatness. But sadly, fate had other plans. It's an age-old story. A young band enters into a restrictive contract and then finds great success. Suddenly they find themselves trapped. They need to grow and progress, but their original label has them penned in. The Roses remain tied up in legal battles for like the next 5 years. There's no new music, no concerts, no media, pretty much silence for several years. When this finally gets resolved around 1993, progress is sluggish, they've lost their momentum, and their second album doesn't come out until 1994, a full 5 years after their debut. Their comeback record, The Second Coming, is just okay. Not great, not terrible, just like, what the kids today would call mid. And with the long wait and expectations sky high, anything less than a paradigm shifter would have been seen as a flop. And The Second Coming shifted no paradigms. Even still, they could have dusted themselves off and gotten past this, but they just could not get it together. The tour to support this record was a legendary cock-up, and half of them quit, and it was just a mess, and then the remaining members finally called it for good in 1996.
Amateurs!
Nonetheless, we love them. That first record and its associated singles and B-sides were so strong that they still have a place in a lot of hearts, even to this day, including mine. So that's who the Roses are. But what's this dangerous story involving Jesus and Da Vinci and the Knights Templar and the Holy Grail? What we have here is said to be the true story of one Jesus of Nazareth. Now, this story made its modern resurgence in the early 80s with the publication of a book called Holy Blood and Holy Grail. But it really burst into the mainstream with the publication of Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code and its subsequent film starring Tom Hanks and the woman that played Amelie. It goes something like this. Forget the story about Jesus' final earthly days. He was actually married to Mary Magdalene, and she was not a sex worker. She was unfairly maligned as such by those wishing to discredit her. She was swift-boated.
Honesty and character still matter, especially in a time of war. Swift vets and POWs for truth.
See, she was not only Jesus' wife, but his closest confidant, advisor, and strategist. She was meant to inherit his ministry and carry on his teachings after he died. She was meant to be head of the new church. Yet this fact was severely repressed by early church leaders out of fear and a desire for power. It may surprise you that Magdalene was present at the Last Supper. And when Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "This is my blood, this is my body," he wasn't talking about some weird, like, drinking blood cannibal thing. It was a metaphor. This is my pregnant wife who's pregnant with my bloodline, and they will take over the church after I'm gone. So it's blood as in my flesh and blood. And this Holy Grail, it's not a literal cup. It's Magdalene and her womb containing the blood of Jesus. In fact, they say Holy Grail is a mistranslation of the Latinate sangreal. It's not San Grial, like San Francisco, Saint Grail, or Holy Grail. It's Sang Real, as in Real Madrid or El Camino Real, as in royal. So Sang, blood, Real, royal blood. I will admit that makes a little more sense. Of course, there was instantly infighting amongst the disciples, and St. Peter thought he should be in charge. And this is why we have this accepted story of the resurrection. So 3 days after his crucifixion by Rome, Jesus is said to have come back from the dead, said, "Peter's in charge, my rock," and then ascended to heaven without taking any questions, which is very convenient for Peter. So if Magdalene was pregnant, what became of Jesus' descendants? Ils sont devenus français. They became French. See, after the crucifixion, fearing for her life, Magdalene escaped to the south of France, which frankly sounds like something my Madonna would do. Over there, she was worshipped, and her descendants and bloodline have been protected by these secret societies ever since. Their descendants became royalty called the Merovingians, who I am unfamiliar with because I don't think they appear in the Tudors, which is where I get 95% of my European history from. So that's an interesting story, but what does it mean? Long story short, early church leaders suppressed all of this out of fear of competition from the sacred feminine. See, humanity has had a long tradition of divine femininity, from Isis to Venus to Frida. And as Christianity spread and remade the world, this female influence on religion needed to be subjugated. Christianity became very male-centric. Our Father, who art, setting up these strict hierarchies in their male-only orders. And this attitude gave us a little thing called the patriarchy and all its attendant ills and problems for the next 2,000 years. And cutting women out of the picture entirely and severing us from that sacred feminine energy was a terrible loss for all of us. Men, women, every one of us. It threw us deeply out of whack, since complementary energies are meant to exist in us all. So while this story of Jesus and Magdalene is interesting, it's it's bigger than that. Without this erasure of the sacred feminine, human history would have been very different. And this new myth, this new story, offers an alternative to the patriarchal, masculine power structures of organized religion. It somewhat restores a place for women and provides a pathway to something that feels more complete. Okay, but what does any of this have to do with Leonardo da Vinci? Well, according to this story, he was the Grand Master of a secret society called the Priory of Sion. This group is sworn to protect the physical evidence of the story's veracity, as well as keeping the Christ dynasty's living descendants out of the clutches of their adversaries. Now, Leonardo was just one of a long line of great artists and thinkers and philosophers who were the Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion. And these include Isaac Newton, Victor Hugo, Jean-Claude Cocteau, and others. Since the church was very threatened by this story, and as we know, they could get pretty burny with their enemies, artists needed to use hidden symbols and metaphors to pass along this knowledge. Is there any evidence to support any of this? Well, let's have a look. Behold the Last Supper. Not actually a fresco. So this person to Jesus's right, our left, is said to be Saint John. However, over the years, many people have noted he looks a bit feminine. And that's because it's actually Magdalene. And everybody looks a bit upset because Jesus just dropped the bombshell of she's pregnant and also she's the one that's going to be in charge. Not, as is commonly understood, that he just predicted their disloyalty. One of you denies me, one of you betrays me. Like that part of the show. And yeah, that's where I get a lot of my Christian history from as well. And I have to say, personally, if that is St. John, everybody needs to back up and let them figure it out for themselves. You're not supposed to call anybody an egg. Some other hints, Jesus and Magdalene are kind of matchy-matchy in those mirror image colors, and they form sort of a vague shape of an M. St. Peter looks plenty mad, and he's making that threatening gesture across her throat. And there's also this weird disembodied dagger, which is just like disembodied hand threatening people. But you'll also notice there's no Grail. Where is the big Monty Python pimp chalice that we've come to expect? They don't even have the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade humble bowl version. They don't have anything. They've just got these little glassy glasses. That's because Maggie herself is the Grail, and Leonardo knew that, and that's what he was depicting. So now, what does any of this have to do with the Stone Roses? Well, first, their name. It's almost too cliche. If you were to make up a rock band associated with all of this, you would probably call them the Stone Roses. In the same way that a band that's super into like the Kennedy assassination would call themselves the Grassy Knolls, the Book Depositories, whatever. See, the rose is a major symbol of the feminine divine in general, and Magdalene in particular. That's why there's rose images all over Christianity. Using a rose is the primary way of saying, this story is about the Magdalene bloodline story. Take, for instance, the story of Sleeping Beauty. We have a hidden princess named for the dawn, Aurora, who goes into hiding because evil forces want to suppress her. And she sleeps like the dormant Magdalene myth. The sacred feminine who will one day awaken and transform the world. Her pseudonym when in hiding, Briar Rose. Another Magdalene overlap in Disney media is that this painting, entitled The Penitent Magdalene, appears out of nowhere in The Little Mermaid. But let's look at some of their lyrics. First, some basic Christian oppositional thinking. They establish their Christian mindset and conflict with the establishment right off the bat with their single, I Want to Be Adored, which is a direct reference to Lucifer's fall. Once the most beautiful of heaven's angels, Lucifer wanted to take a little bit of that adoration for himself, so he had to go. Ian Brown, the singer of the Stone Roses, sings, "I don't have to sell my soul. He's already in me." So Ian is not following your rules. Then there's I Am the Resurrection. They made a whole song paraphrasing the famous line from John 11:12. I am the resurrection and I am the life. He who believes in me and dies will live. The rest of the song doesn't actually have that much to do with this. It kind of sounds like a bitter breakup. But he does sort of allude to Ecclesiastes 3 when he says, turn, turn. I'd wish you'd learn there's a time and place for everything. But that could be more of a Birds reference, who also famously took Ecclesiastes 3.1 through 8. Now we start to get more explicit references to the Sangreal Magdalene story in She Bangs the Drums, which gives us this idea of a female Christ figure. This mysterious woman who bangs the drums is coming, and as he waits, he fills himself with passion fruits and holy breads. The past was yours, old church, but the future's mine, because I'm throwing in with the sacred feminine restored. And finally, she'll be the first, she'll be the last. Echoes Jesus' line in Revelations 22:13, where he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Now that's all well and good, but what really sells this is that they pretty much explicitly say it in their comeback single, Love Spreads. This song has a chorus that is repeated over and over and over, 8 times total in the song, 6 times in a row at the end. And it goes, let me put you in the picture, let me show you what I mean. The Messiah is my sister, ain't no king man, she's my queen. Pronounced Messiah and sister because of his adorable regional accent.
You have to tell me why you thought we were insecure.
Sorry?
I don't think we're insecure way of life. No.
So let me put you in the picture, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn you on to the truth. I'm going to initiate you into the mystery cult. This is what's going on. The Messiah is my sister, ain't no king man, she's my queen. The Savior is a woman. Ian serves not a king of kings, but a queen of queens. And I will let you make your own king of queens joke, for I am benevolent. He's talking about Magdalene, the original Holy Grail, come to reconnect us with our feminine side and transform the world, to spread love. Some other interesting lyrics. Love spreads her arms and waits there for the nails. She is gladly accepting the Christ position and all its pains and sacrifices. It's worth it if it means that the truth will finally dawn on mankind. Fittingly, Love Spreads peaked at number 2 on the British charts, held off by timeless classic Let Me Be Your Fantasy by Baby D, and I blame the patriarchy. So is this story about Magdalene and the Holy Grail and Leonardo da Vinci true? Scholars and academics will tell you no. That Dan Brown's book is just fiction in that, what if this weird conspiracy theory was true kind of way. But are we really going to start listening to experts now? I think the bigger question is, does it matter? In the book, people are willing to kill and die to keep this secret because it would cause a massive crisis of faith and organized religion would never recover and the church would just pack up and leave or whatever. But in the real world, no. This doesn't matter one bit. Not a single soul would care or change their mind at all. There's already a shit ton of irrefutable scientific evidence to disprove most religious stories, and nobody cares. That's kind of the point, to keep believing when confronted with this evidence. In today's world, a fossil record literally written in stone is barely a speed bump. So some minor edits to the origin story is not, like many don't even follow the story they've already agreed on, like help the poor and don't judge and love your enemies. Like, after all, this is still a super Christian interpretation. Jesus still existed, he still worked miracles, His teachings are the same. I think this idea caught fire back in the uncertain world of 2003 because it kind of makes sense. Clears up this whole confusing, this is my blood, you should drink my blood thing. The whole 2,000 years of patriarchy business might need a rest. And yeah, we all feel pretty off balance emotionally and spiritually. And as big as this was back then, it has all but vanished from the collective consciousness. I think it's because conspiracy theories and this whole hidden truths they don't want you to know about have all gotten a lot less fun over the past 2 decades, and people that are drawn to them have found much more potent nonsense to throw their lives away on. Do I think the Stone Roses believe this stuff? I don't know. But if you ever find yourself with the strange confluence of events that lead you to listening to the Second Coming around about the same time that you've read the Da Vinci Code, you might find yourself going, huh. My name is David, and I will talk to you soon.